Hello and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. What is your brand? Whether you're a big company, small startup, or a solopreneur or influencer, what is your brand's forever promise to your customers and followers? Are you building a subscription model so compelling that your customers will never want to leave? Robbie Kelman Baxter is a strategy consultant helping companies develop and optimize membership models and subscription pricing, and she's the author of The Membership Economy as well as her newest book, The Forever Transaction. And on this episode, we'll discuss the Forever Promise, membership economies, Netflix, Amazon, layering in value, the North Star, going from free to a penny, pricing strategies, staying current, how I don't own a Peloton, Burger King, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a Forever Promiser with a Forever Shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Robbie, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. You know, for those who maybe haven't read your book or read your bio, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Today I'm a subject matter expert on membership and subscription models. And I got here through a sort of circuitous path. I studied poetry in college, loved to read, loved to write. Went to business school where I started working in product management for products with recurring revenue, enterprise software, SaaS kinds of products. And 5 years into that, I got laid off while I was on maternity leave with my second child.
Oh, nice.
I know, nice, right? It's totally legal, by
Yeah.
the way. It was just bad timing.
Yeah.
Um, but the outcome of that was that I said, I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to do something where I'm in control of my income, and all I have to do is make my clients happy. Um, and I'll do that for a while. I did that. I said I was going to do it just until my kids were out of diapers, which would have been 5 years. But I ended up falling in love with independent consulting and all that came with being a subject matter expert. A few years into consulting, I had Netflix as a client, and I just loved everything about that business model and started studying it because as I was falling in love with Netflix, everybody else was. And I started getting calls from other businesses saying, hey, we want to be the Netflix of news or music or, software or bicycles or dental pain management products or you name it. Someone wanted to Netflix it. And I was on my way. And I've written 2 books on that topic. And there's always something new to learn. And I just love it.
Yeah, I want to be the Netflix of business leaders who love sharks. That's the distinct path I'm going for. But how much of this did you see with not only just businesses but individuals? Because I think for a lot of people that, and we'll dive in a little bit differently in this going into the book, but it's really a difference between followers and people that are potentially purchasing. I think sometimes people get so locked up in just to how many followers an individual has or followers that a page has as to whether or not you can translate that into sales. But once they are able to leverage figuring out how to do that with followers and turning them into, say, subscribers, to use that kind of terminology of it, it can be just a magical path to financial freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. Subscriptions are great for subject matter experts and celebrities, solopreneurs, because if you can, here's the thing about free. Um, if, the difference between content or value that you would take if somebody gave it to you for free and what you're willing to pay even 1 penny for is
Mm-hmm.
huge. And so the
Yes.
first challenge I think that somebody faces when they go from giving away their stuff for free to selling it or offering it for a subscription is you suddenly have a much, much higher bar, which I think a lot of people don't understand. Now, free works when you have an advertising model. It's different. It's all about the eyeballs. So, for example, if you're a news organization um, and you're trying to get eyeballs because you have an ad model, it might be great to have an article about Kim Kardashian because you'll get a lot of eyeballs. On the other hand, a much smaller audience will be interested in trends in the bond market. Uh, but those people who care a lot about the bond market are willing to pay for good content.
Absolutely.
Whereas the Kardashian followers may be more particular about what they're willing to pay for. So if you want to move, if you are an independent person with subject matter expertise or celebrity, you really have to know who you're serving, and you have to optimize your content to provide value to the people you're serving as opposed to get the clicks and the likes and the page views.
Talk about your newest book, The Forever Transaction, and then how that was really different from your previous book, Membership Economy.
Sure. So I wrote the membership economy 6 years ago. It came out 5 years ago, and I wrote it because I was seeing, after working with Netflix and SurveyMonkey and you know Oracle and Intuit's PayCycle, which is online payroll for small businesses, I started to see this trend, this massive transformation that almost any business could do to move from transactional to relational,
Mm-hmm.
from one payment to subscription payments. And I tried to convey the power of that, that basically, hey, you could do that in your business. If you're a solopreneur, if you're a big company, if you're a nonprofit, if you're public, if you're private. And I got a lot of blank stares. And so I wrote the book. I mean, they're like, I don't get it. I don't think it's relevant for me. We're too small. We're too big. We're too established. We're too new. It's not going to work for us. So I wrote the book to make my case. And, 5 years later, I don't have to do that anymore. Everybody understands that subscription business models, tapping into the power of a membership mindset can drive recurring revenue, higher valuations, greater profitability, greater data to allow you to continue to iterate and tinker with your offering. Everybody understands that, but companies and individuals struggle to do it. They tend to like slap a subscription price onto whatever products they already have,
Exactly.
right, and they assume it's going to work. And so this new book, The Forever Transaction, is about how to do it, how to start if you're a solopreneur or you're an intrapreneur inside a big company, how to scale it once you've kind of tapped into something that's working. And then finally, for businesses that have been around a while, how do you stay relevant? How do you continue to tinker with your offering so that it's great for the people who are already members, but it's also compelling to prospects who haven't, kind of drunk the Kool-Aid yet?
Sure. Well, and I love the quote in there that you have in there in the first chapter. If you have a business that depends on sales and marketing to attract and retain customers, this book can help you bring it into the membership economy. And I was trying to think of a company that didn't rely on sales and marketing at
Uh,
this point. But
yeah,
as we sort
I,
of
I
dive
have
into,
some examples.
please give them.
Yeah. Well, if you have a regulatory advantage, if you're the last gas for 100 miles,
Sure.
um, if you have a patent, if you sell a commodity at a market, like so, for example, and I know this, Shark, because I've had the painful experience of speaking in front of an audience and then having people come up to me afterwards
Right.
saying, "That's really cool. How does it work for me? I have a fleet of fishing boats. How does it work for me?
Yeah.
My business is owned by three large companies, and they're the only ones I sell to. How does it work for me? I have a patent on a drug that saves people's lives if they have this rare disease."
Hmm.
And I realized that there is this subset of businesses where they can treat the customer as badly as they want, but as long as their product works, that customer has no choice. The minute a customer has choice, you have to start thinking about how you serve them, how you sell to them, how you talk to them, how you market to them.
Yeah, and it's sad that they have to think of that then and not before. I wish that if everybody was focused on it, regardless of who else was competing against them in the market, it would probably raise the bar for a lot of companies. But I do love the fact that you also mentioned there, membership mindset focuses your organization on the long-term needs of your customers and creates all kinds of ways to layer it in. It's that longer-term need as well with customers. How do you look at this then, that with making a subscription model to help customers solve problems and really stay more customer centric for an organization? Because as much as it's something that you're doing for your brand, it's also got to be transformational for how the customer solves their own problems, and that focus shifts to them.
Yeah, well, you just said it beautifully. You have to think about both. If you don't have an intersection of what's in it for them on an ongoing basis, and what's in it for us, the organization, on an ongoing basis, you don't have a, a true forever transaction. Um, in business school, I took this class, this intro to law class, business law, and one of the things she said is you can't have a contract unless both sides have to do something.
Hmm.
And it's sort of like that in a forever transaction. You've got to have, you know, the customer has to see ongoing value and be willing to pay for it. And the company has to create ongoing value that they're willing to continue to create. Um, and, you know, that's really where the magic happens, is when they both have that long term commitment.
So, what is a forever promise? And the reason I bring up that the way you phrased that in the book is that I was really starting to think about this a lot with who this fits and who this doesn't. If you're Netflix, and not, I'm using them as an example, or Sephora, maybe somebody that's not a legacy brand per se. I don't.
Hmm. Hmm.
When you look at something like that, as opposed to CBS is not a great example because they're even trying to transform themselves into more of that subscription with CBS All Access. But if you're looking at Netflix versus other types of TV
Yeah.
film providers, they're the new kids on the block. They set up that way. It's successful for them going forward. How do you go about transforming a large organization into this? Because we still have a lot
Yeah.
of large companies out there. It seems very easy that it's supposed to be able to do if you're starting a company or at a point where there's not too much friction. But anything beyond that
Yes.
is remarkably hard to do.
Yes. The burden of your own success. If you're, some of the examples that I think about, if you're a consumer products, when Netflix came out, right, and they kind of ran circles around Blockbuster, or Amazon, what they've done to retail, traditional retail. A lot of the reason that they've been successful is because they have no burden of legacy. They don't. I sometimes say, they think of themselves like, we're nimble like a speedboat, and you're this big old heavy cargo ship. And the truth is, yeah, they're a big old heavy cargo ship. They have a lot of cargo. They have a lot of customers. They have a lot of assets. They have a lot of employees. They have a lot of shareholders. They have quarterly numbers. Startups don't have any of those
Mm-hmm.
burdens, so it's easier for them to move quickly. They have less to risk. They have longer runway. Usually they're not expected to make a profit for, let's say, 7 years. Whereas, if you're Unilever, right, or CVS, you're expected to make a profit, and hit your number every single quarter, which makes it much, much harder. So if you're in one of those organizations and you want to move to a subscription model, which all of them want to do. I mean, Burger King has a subscription model, for goodness sake. Everybody is in the subscription world now. And what you have to do is go off in the corner with a small team and pick one best member that you're going to focus your subscription on. So you may have all different kinds of segments, all different kinds of customers. Pick one group where you'd say, this is somebody who has a long lifetime value. They love our products and services. We can serve them really well, and they are willing to pay us for that value. We can solve their problem or help them achieve their ongoing goal forever. And once you know who that is, you optimize the subscription for that very narrow segment. And then if it works, that's kind of your launch phase. If it's working, then as you scale, you can layer in value that makes it attractive to other parts of your audience. The way that, for example, Amazon did, where today they basically, their forever promise is to make it as easy as possible for consumers to buy anything, right? And their vision is that, I think, oh, I wish I had better lighting here. And suddenly there's better lighting here. And if I say that's not what I meant, it disappears and something else appears in its place. They're not quite there yet, but they have, experimented with asking customers for the keys to their home so they can bring the stuff right inside. Um, Before this whole, we're in April of 2020, before the sheltering in place happened, I could take literally like a t-shirt that I bought for my son with no wrapping on it and just the little, receipt that came in the package,
Mm-hmm.
bring it to my neighborhood packing store and just hand it to them. Like, no packaging,
Oh
no
no.
labels, right? They're making it so, pretty soon I'm just going to be able to throw it out in my front yard and somebody will come by and pick it up for me. But, having that forever promise and then understanding how to layer in more and more value to get there. And the point I was trying to make is that Amazon started with just books, and the books were delivered in like a week and a half. So that's very far from their promise that they were aiming for. But for many of us, that was the easiest way to get books,
It is,
right,
but you
at that
bring up
time.
just a fantastic example. If you had looked at Amazon and put them, and granted, I mean this is a 20-year-old company now. If you
Yeah.
looked at what their forever promise was and that promise being broken, it would still be very hard to say that they aren't a obviously a very successful. At least Jeff Bezos' bank account and would tell you differently, but it would be hard. You'd be hard pressed to think of them as not a very successful company that completely broke that promise, that forever promise in their subscription model? Or is it better to think that they didn't actually necessarily have a forever promise? And the reason I ask it sort of that way is so many companies start one way and then they have to pivot another way. So when you're starting to figure out what that forever promise is, does it need to be narrow or broad? Maybe Amazon didn't break their forever promise. Their forever promise was this when I thought it was that. And maybe that's something that as you're implementing your own type of forever promise within a company, maybe you need to think about it in different terms than even I'm thinking now.
Yeah, yeah, no, those are great comments. I think that Amazon has actually stayed remarkably true to their vision,
Sure.
and that promise has been there, which is, to make it as easy as possible to buy whatever you need. And they started with,
Yeah,
we're going to
exactly.
start with making it as easy as possible for you to buy books. And, 20 years later, 23 years later, you and I would say, well, the way that they did that 23 years ago was not as easy as it is now, but at the time it was. And, you know, at the time it was only books because that was the only that was where they test, I always say test and learn, test and learn. And their first test, with books, what they learned was, do people they only learned about the people that liked books. They learned about how they can manage a long tail. They learned a lot about communication and support and managing an e-commerce business. Those were all like on their list of hypotheses and things they needed to learn. They weren't sure they could do well. Check, check, check. And then with each new layer, they were kind of checking off more and more of their questions. And now they're kind of working on, how do we, is it the easiest possible way? How do we make it easier? Can you buy anything you need? What's missing? What friction? They always talk about removing friction from the process. Where is there still friction? And how can they remove it? And that's been their North Star, the frictionless, purchase of anything.
Great point. Yeah, I was just literally just going to bring up chapter 7, test, learn, adjust, but you just answered that perfectly. So, and then I wanted to switch to North Star. You talk about really sort of helping find that champion that's going to help enact this and make that impact within an organization. It made me recall someone that just a few years ago was the CEO at a company where I'd worked. And I remember being on their yearly call and they were talking about, their North Star, that North Star vision, if you will, as you describe it, was keeping more focus on the customer than they ever had before. And not within a year, at a decent sized company, this person was removed and a new CEO came in. This happens all the time with leadership, where whether or not your champion is necessarily at the highest level of a CEO or a CMO or a director of marketing or head of customer experience or whatever, how do you help guide those companies to really go beyond just the champion to make that part of their North Star culture rather than just a vision that's championed by one person, but it could take a hard pivot the other way when the new person comes in?
Yeah, yeah. So you bring up some really important,
Well, especially now when
kind of,
we're seeing all these job cuts and losses, and there's going to be a whole different shuffling of the deck in the next foreseeable future.
yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I want to just point out that subscription businesses are less hard hit for the most part than other businesses right now. And
That's true.
at least according to Zuora, the subscription billing platform, of the companies that use their platform, uh, between Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year, only 11% of them saw a decline in membership, which is crazy. That means 89% of the businesses were flat or growing the number of members between Q4 of 2019 and the end of March of 2020, kind of peak, pandemic. And, the So there are good reasons, and I think people are becoming even more aware of the good reasons to move to this membership customer centric mindset. But if you're a middle manager listening to this, and you're some VP of marketing somewhere, and your CEO says, "Hey, we want to go experiment with subscriptions. Do you want to be in charge?" You want to make sure that your CEO is going to back you up, that
Hmm.
this is on their short list of goals for the year, that they're moving to a, customer centric, direct to consumer member mindset, and that they're going to give you the runway you need to continue to experiment until you hit upon the right model. If you don't have that support from the top, I would advise you to say no, thank you to that,
Yeah.
to that post, to that challenge.
Well, what kind of guidance, though, can you get it for the rest of the culture within the company to adopt it, regardless
Yeah.
of who's in charge?
Yeah. So it has to be leadership has to, first of all, support this. And then tactically, let's say that you have a CEO who believes in membership. You have a great little subscription business off in the corner, the way that, let's say, Unilever does, right? They have a Dollar Shave Club off in the corner. Um, so what do you do if you want to roll it out across the whole organization? Um, the first thing is, you need somebody who has scaling and operational expertise. So often the person that is launching this new offering is more entrepreneurial, more visionary, more strategic, less operational, less process driven, less consistent. Um, and you need that operator to take it to the next level, because you're going to need to think about, what is our new culture, what is our transformation strategy, what are the steps along the way. And it's really a very deliberate process across the organization. One organization that's done this really well is Microsoft, under Satya Nadella.
Oh, yeah.
They acquired, they've had, mostly enterprise software and consumer packaged software. And then, they've moved to like Office 365 and more of a subscription model with their marquee products. They've also acquired LinkedIn, which had acquired lynda.com. These are,
Hmm.
bringing a lot of subscription DNA into the
Skype.
organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they have a subscription 101 class, to teach people who are doing subscription work how to do it, how to think about it, and what it means for the culture. They've also changed metrics from, you know, I think the other thing to change the culture, you really want to move from metrics around revenue as a big number to monthly active users, annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, acquisition of new subscribers, but also engagement. So, how much are they using what they're paying for, and how are they using what they're paying for? And retention. How long do they stay and continue to pay? By by prioritizing some of those other metrics, you start to change the culture as well.
So Netflix is a great example that you bring up that you worked with before, and it's a little bit unfair sometimes, I think, to compare everything to Netflix because they are so much the gold standard. And in Q1 2020, I just saw the numbers just recently. Their subscribers in Q1 more than doubled what were projected. They projected 7.2 million subscriber growth, and they actually had 15.8 million. Phenomenal numbers because everybody's sitting at home watching Netflix and Ozark and Tiger King and things like that when they've got nowhere else to go. But what is maybe a non-Netflix benchmark? I don't want to lower the bar, but what's something that somebody can maybe put their brain around that's not necessarily a Netflix model? Because if you're a small tech shop, for example, you aspire to be Microsoft one day, but Microsoft didn't happen overnight either.
Yeah, yeah. So, if you're just starting out in the software business, so one of the companies that I think is really interesting is OpenGov. They have a software for small municipalities to visually understand their budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you could ask a question like, "How much did we pay our police force in overtime this year versus last year, and what percentage was that, and is it growing or decreasing?" You could pull that up visually really quick in like a town meeting and really see what's going on with how you're spending your budget. And this is a smaller company. I think they've only been around for about 6, maybe certainly fewer than 10 years, private. Uh, but they're adopting a lot of this membership mindset, in terms of, the revenue is SaaS, so it's subscription-based revenue. They invest a lot in onboarding new subscribers. So, it's not enough to just sell into the company. You have to make sure that the people inside the organization are using it, um, and track usage, because engagement is a predictor of retention. So if people aren't using your products and services to get the value out of it, they're going to cancel. If I stop going to the gym as frequently as I used to, there's a pretty good chance I'm going to cancel. So if I'm the gym owner and I see that Robbie used to go 5 days a week and then she went 3 days a week and now she's going maybe once every other week, they need an intervention before I call to cancel.
Hmm.
And so, you need to onboard people to build the habits of using your products regularly and well, which OpenGov does really, really well. And even a solopreneur can do with your one new customer to say, hey, call me anytime. I'm your consultant. Call me when you need me. We're your agency. This is what you're entitled to. Please use these services. And if they're not using them, say, hey, you're entitled to XYZ. We see that you're not using it. Why aren't you using it? Can we make it more valuable to you? Is it not useful? Did you not understand it was there? And as you do that and you focus on engagement, you get more focused on, where the value is coming from. You can see in advance if somebody's not getting value and is likely to cancel. And you can do all of these things from a very early point in your business. You can do it if you're operating on your own, or a small agency, or really any sized business can be thinking about these things.
Does it take a full shift of everything, or do you see this to where people are testing a product line or a service line and maybe making that a separate subscription model, building it out specifically to test this, as opposed to
Yeah.
moving pointing the entire ship in a different direction? I think, just if anything, I want to try to help people start thinking about how they can at least bite a nugget of this as opposed to the entire pie.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, the first section of the book, Launch, is really about this.
Yeah,
How do you, off in a corner, experiment, build something that works, and prove that it works, and develop, the learning. That means, kind of you to understand as the team leader how it works and what the pieces are and what you need to do to be successful, but also the leverage, which is the data, the facts, the revenue, to drive change across the organization, right? If I come, yesterday I was talking to Piper Rosenshine, who runs subscriptions for A&E, the content company that has through cable. They have
sure.
linear content, but they also have subscription. You can subscribe to one of their channels, and just get it through your app. And she's building leverage. She's building data to say, look, team, we're growing our number of subscribers. Look, our subscribers to the app are continuing to subscribe to cable. They're not cutting the cord. This is actually good for us. It's good for our partners. It's good for them because they want more content. So she's been able to develop the data that gives her greater influence, more resources, because she's able to prove to the rest of the organization that her little business that's kind of off in the corner is, not only is it driving a lot of revenue, but it's driving deeper engagement that's helping the other side of the business as well.
How then should we look at pricing for this? Because I know that's going to be obviously the question for how we either test this and figure it out. But I mean, you're so right. I mean, just getting somebody to go from free to only a penny is like going
Yeah,
from here to Mars. So
totally.
this is not easy to test out. I say not easy to test out. It's nothing's easy to test out, but this is a big shift if you can convince customers to move in that direction. But how do we start building pricing strategies around it?
Yeah. So, you and I, as two marketing people, we could talk about pricing all day.
Sure.
So I'll try to keep it short. The first thing is you want to price as simply as you can, but no simpler. So there's a temptation to, especially if you come out of a transactional business, to kind of break out all the components and make it into an algorithm of pricing. Like, oh, you want that feature? That's an extra $3. Oh, you have another person on your team or in your family that wants to use it? That's an extra $1.50. Oh, you want service? You want to actually be able to call somebody if it's not working? Well, that's going to cost you an extra $10 a month.
Mm-hmm.
The more you do, companies do that because they don't understand how their members are going to use their products and services, and they don't understand what their own costs are going to be. Um, you want to get to a point where you understand your costs so that you can charge a simple price. It's like a buffet in Las Vegas, right? They know that for every person that makes a beeline for the oyster bar and eats 500 oysters, there's 100 people who are going to fill up on spaghetti, right? And so they're able to offer that marquee value and not worry that their business is going to go lopsided. There's also a temptation to have a really complicated pricing structure because billing systems for subscription are so sophisticated now. You can do anything. It's like when you get your 64 Crayola crayon box, for your birthday, and suddenly every picture has all the colors, and it's like, whoa, that's too much. You need to show a little restraint. So I would say keep your pricing simple. Start with a single tier, not 3 tiers. Start with 1 tier. And then as you learn, if you say, wow, there are people that are pushing on the edge of what we can do, they're using all of our features and they're demanding more service, more features, more whatever, say, oh, maybe we can add a higher level offering. Or if you see that there's a lot of friction to get people to join your subscription, because they don't think they're going to use as much as you're giving them in the membership, you might offer a lower priced tier. But you don't want to start with lots of tiers. Start with one and learn.
Great point.
And then the other thing I would say is to blend in free, or at least think about the role of free, either as a free trial, which is a taste of the best thing you've got, either because you're finding that your prospects don't believe that what you have is as good as you say it is, or they just don't understand what it tastes like. And then you want to think about freemium, which is offering something for free forever as a way of building relationships. And I want to circle back because you brought this up at the very beginning with these individual celebrities, influencers, thought leaders who give away too much value. And, you give away something for free, but you have to know what your ROI is. You have to know why you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But you want to think about it. So it's kind of this very careful path.
It is, but I'll tell you, I hear Gary Vaynerchuk every once in a while, and I don't know that he's the best example for this. I mean, the guy's got millions of followers. He encourages everybody to give everything away for free. And a lot of people are reluctant to put anything out there. There's a blend somewhere in between. It's a lot easier for somebody like him to say that versus somebody who's transitioned it well and has coaching classes or anything else they're doing as an influencer that turns into some sort of subscription model. And there's still a value in people's times, and not all the content should be free, at least in my opinion. As much as you can give away that makes sense, but to your point, everything you give away should have an ROI on it.
Yeah, you really, I think Gary Vaynerchuk's a genius, and his content is great, and I've learned a lot from him. I think you don't want to give away everything. You want to understand what the role of giving stuff away is in your business model, and you want to be able to say that in a really clear way. So if you're in the newspaper business, for example, in olden times, they might give you, a week free trial where they'd send the whole paper, the best that they have to offer, and you can see the whole thing, and then you can decide if that's something that you want. Now you believe them. The content is really good. And freemium, they used to offer 10 articles. That was kind of the industry standard, 10 articles a month, a paywall, right? And the idea was every month you do the 10 articles and you keep hitting up against the paywall. And one day you'd say, oh, this is my new normal. I do use digital for my New York Times. And so now I'm going to subscribe to digital. But what happened was they were being too generous.
Mm-hmm.
And what people would do is they'd do the 10 articles on one pub. And then when they hit the paywall, they'd go to the next pub and do 10 articles, and they'd go to the next one, and they never converted. The metric that news organizations use to see if that freemium is working is are the people that are using freemium converting in a
Converting,
predictable way?
right.
And when they started tracking that, they changed what they gave away. So it's no most newspapers, it's no longer 10 a month.
Oh,
It's
it's maybe
something like,
3.
well, yeah, and it might be 10 the first month, 3 the second month, 1 the third month, and
Sure.
then the door closes. Or it might be, as you said, 3 the first month. Like, okay, you've seen 3 articles, now you know what it tastes like. Um, and they're getting much tighter about it because they're much clearer about the rule. Now, in contrast, LinkedIn has huge value, free forever, and
Exactly.
the reason is because those of us who don't pay, in case you didn't realize it, we're the product,
Mhm.
right? For the salespeople who are looking for their targets, for the recruiters who are looking to hire the right kind of skills, um, for the job seeker who's trying to figure out who they know who can help them find employment. Those people are willing to pay because the rest of us are there. So that's a good reason for freemium as well. But I think all of these celebrities and influencers that are building up all this awareness without thinking about how that fits into their business model are are really wasting a lot of effort, and I feel bad for them.
Oh, I could not agree more. This is something that I watch with people a lot, and seeing how they're a lot of friends are trying to transition into different spaces, and some of them do it as simply as how they build that audience to maybe later sell a book. Or for
Yeah.
me, it's providing some consulting service or something else. But those that know what they're doing, as opposed to those that are just trying to continuously grow their number of followers without necessarily turning them into subscribers, are still missing the boat and then chasing after just weird deals with different brands to finance them down the way. And that could all just turn off in a day like it did so many. So, how do you look at brands that are working on staying current to keep from having that membership fatigue? Because today's TikTok was yesterday's Facebook. Not a great example, but one looks brand new and sexy, and the
Great.
other
I
looks
understand.
somewhat stale. I mean, even YouTube is trying to transition to offer something TikTok-ish, but at the same point, we get excited about TikTok's growth, and it is a great. I could not believe how much I've enjoyed watching the most ridiculous videos when I just get tired of watching all the news coverage. But at the same time, in the US, well, even in the world, they still don't have anywhere close to the growth that Facebook still has over 2 billion people. I may get tired of looking at Facebook, and TikTok is growing, but Facebook still has a much broader reach. So, how does any brand really just keep up with staying current with a subscription type model so that people don't get tired of it?
Yeah. So this question of staying current is really tricky for a couple of reasons. When I was researching my first book, I talked to the founder, Tim Westergren of Pandora. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things that he said that really stuck with me is he said, we really resisted any any idea of us being edgy or cool or the
Exactly.
latest thing
Yeah.
because live by the sword, die by the sword. He said, we wanted to play well in Peoria or whatever it is that they say. We wanted to be an everyman's music service because if you're the new thing today, tomorrow you're not. And so that's one thing that I'd say. The second thing is that you need to make a distinction between your packaging and your value. So what happens is, let's say that you take, I don't know, you take Facebook and you say, Facebook is going to be the best way for people to stay connected and up to date with family and friends. Um, Great forever promise, like, in 20 years, in 40 years, I'm still going to want to stay connected with family and friends, hopefully, right? And but the how is going to change. And so if there's some new fun little technology like TikTok that makes it, that comes up with a new way to connect or a new way to share stuff, um, I want my service that I'm committed to continue to evolve and stay relevant. I also, if it's really important for me to stay connected to my family, which is a Facebook promise, right? But my teenagers don't want to be on Facebook, I have a problem. Facebook has a problem, right? Because it's no longer helping me stay connected to my family because part of my family refuses to go there.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to keep going back to your forever promise and say, if I were starting out today, is this the way I deliver value? What can I do to stay current with my offering? And the issue that comes up with a lot of organizations is they start out with this mindset, then they build the products, and then they hire product teams, and then those product teams love the product more than they love the customer. And so, for example, in the world of newspapers, they have people who do print, and they have people who do the morning edition and the evening edition. And then suddenly you're like, we're not going to have a morning and evening edition anymore. So you lose your titles. And that's hard, right? You get a lot of pushback, or you say, we're going to do it digitally. For a long time, a lot of the big newspapers, uh, digital was considered like a packaging, like, okay, first we do the newspaper and it goes to print, and then we put it up on digital, which of course is crazy because digital is so much faster to post. The latest content should always be digital. Everybody's figured this out now, but the mindset was we're a newspaper company and we have this digital thing that's also available. Instead of saying we're helping people understand the world around them and make better decisions, and what's the best way to do that today? It might be with digital, it might be with print, it might be with classes, it might be with networking events, it might be with, access to a hotline to call a journalist who's an expert, and say, hey, what do I do in this situation? Those are all different ways of packaging that same value, which is helping me understand the world around me and make better decisions.
We talked about how a brand should start looking at this, even if they're not a startup, transitioning themselves to looking at subscribers. What's your advice for those people that are influencers now to start going from free to freemium? How do you test that out?
Yeah, I actually do a lot of this. I think that the first thing you want to do is figure out what your forever promise is, and who your best members are going to be. So that can be really tricky because you have to really get focused on who is it. Again, the definition of a best member is somebody who's going to get ongoing value from you and be willing to pay for it, because that's who you're going to optimize your paid subscription for. And you have to, and a lot of people are going to be disappointed because you know, they're not going to be the ones that you're targeting with your offering. So, for example, if you, let's say that you're famous because you have a cookbook and you have awesome pictures and recipes that are free on Instagram and YouTube and everything, and everybody knows who you are, you're trying to figure out how to monetize, you need to think about who's going to be able to pay you and be willing to pay you. And what is it that they would be, which segment of your content would they be willing to pay for? Because recipes are kind of a commodity, and even videos about cooking are commodities. But if you have, let's say, expertise about a particular kind of health condition, like how to do vegan cooking, or diabetic, cooking for diabetics, and you have a medical background, suddenly there's a narrower segment, but those people are more willing to pay. So that's where I would go. And if you're on the business side, so let's say you have marketing expertise, you really want to think about who's going to pay for ongoing marketing advice and what's the promise you would make to them, and start really narrow and then expand from there.
Robbie, you're in the San Francisco Bay Area where I've done some dives outside of the Golden Gate Bridge. I ask this of everybody that's been on my show, what is your favorite kind of shark and why?
I think I'm going to say hammerhead because they look so cute and funny.
Fair enough.
um, but we have a whole house full. It's funny. My kids love Shark Week.
Oh, yeah.
And my in-laws, my husband's family lives on the South Shore, outside of Boston.
Yeah.
And they're all like way into sharks, and we had all these books around our house of the different what is it, the nurse shark,
Nurse
and
sharks, yeah.
leopard sharks, and that was very much the language of our family. So
well, a lot more great whites out there outside of the Farallon Islands. Yes. Outside Golden Gate, but I don't know that I've ever seen a hammerhead on that side. But hammerhead is.
No, I've never seen any of them live.
Well, that's
I don't
true.
know that I want to. I mean, live in the wild.
Well, Robbie, it's a special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I hope I'm ready. A little scared, a little excited.
All right, number 1, you got to choose between your 2 former educational alma maters, Stanford or Harvard.
Harvard? I'm saying it softly.
Yeah, it was like nervously. A little bit of a question mark in the end of that. I wasn't sure. All right.
My kids are there now, so
okay.
It's very front of mind.
All right, number 2. You're in the San Francisco area. You've got your choice of a day trip to the Napa Valley, or a day trip to the California Redwoods?
I would go to Napa Valley for the food and the wine and the relaxation.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. Number 3. Good subscription model question. Netflix or Peloton?
I'm going to go with Peloton because I love Netflix
Yeah.
and I've been a huge Netflix supporter for a long time. But uh, there are other ways to entertain myself these
Yeah.
days with there's other streaming content and other sources of great video content. But Peloton is really special, and especially in these days of sheltering in place, I'm on that bike every single day.
Yeah, you watch the wrong kind of Netflix. I mean, you can watch Netflix while on your Peloton, I guess. Can you? Can you
Well,
dial in?
yeah.
You put an I mean, you can just put an iPad up there. I don't know if you can do it directly on the screen.
So I mean, if I'm on the Peloton, Facebook page, and that comes up periodically. There is a way to kind of jerry rig it's just a tablet, right?
Right,
It's just a
exactly.
certain size tablet connected to the internet. So you can jerry rig it so that you can get whatever you
Nice.
want that you could get on any tablet. But what people say is, why would you want to do that
Exactly.
if you spend all this money
Right.
for a bike that has streaming classes? Why would you mess with it? So occasionally, just between you and me, I have a big TV in our garage where
Oh,
our
yeah.
Peloton is. And so sometimes if I'm really having a rough day, I'll just put on the subtitles on the class and I'll turn on the TV and watch the
Nice.
show. I never get as good a workout when I do that, but
True.
sometimes that's all I got in me.
All right. Well, number 4. You brought them up earlier, and I did not know that they had a subscription model. Burger King or Shake Shack?
Shake Shack.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. I mean, Shake Shack has better burgers, but there's something about I think the Burger King model is more lasting. I think I'd rather have my money there.
Interesting. All right. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
These are all and questions. These are really hard. But I'm going to go with biscuits. I've recently discovered them, and
You
my daughter now
recently
makes them.
discovered biscuits?
Well, I mean, I knew what they were,
Yeah.
but they weren't a part of my regular rotation,
Oh.
and now my daughter makes them. And we don't live in the South, so we don't have access to the same kind of quality
Very
and
true.
ubiquity that
Yeah,
that
there's
you
not a
get
lot
to
of
enjoy.
there's not a lot of Cracker Barrels in the Bay Area, so but
No.
no, I've been on a subscription model for biscuits since I was very little.
Oh my gosh.
So Robbie, where can people find out more about you and the Forever Transaction and the membership economy and more?
The best place to find me is RobbieKelmanBaxter.com. That's where you'll find all my articles and information about the books and lots of video content as well. So there's a lot there. You can find me on most social media platforms. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn. I have 10 video courses there, and I'm a beta tester of a lot of their features. So you can find me all over the place there as well.
Robbie, thank you again for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Oh, it was such a pleasure.
So there was my conversation with Robbie Kelman Baxter, a strategy consultant helping companies develop and optimize membership models and subscription pricing, and she's the author of The Membership Economy, as well as her newest book, The Forever Transaction. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from our conversation with her. First, so we discussed that forever promise. As she said, you have to, on an ongoing basis, think about how your product or service is a forever transaction. And I love that. Your customers have to see ongoing value. The company has to create ongoing value to sustain that membership. Do that right, you'll learn to get focused very early on as to how you are providing value. And whatever you can do, continue to layer in more and more value. That continued focus on the customer will also help you stay relevant. Second, when thinking about either starting in this direction or pivoting this way, it's critical to have leadership as high up as possible to support something like this. And she reminded us as well, you need someone with operational excellence who can also help roll this out across the organization and then scale it. Critical as well is to think about making this ingrained in the culture of your company, because with all of the leadership changes from managers to directors to even CEOs, This should be part of your DNA and not just the leader at the time. Microsoft is a great example in that shift we've seen, and she added also that by changing some of those metrics, you start to really change the culture as well. Whatever size of the company you are, even if it's a big ship, you can start this off with a segmented effort, learn from it, test it, have the data to back it up, and then scale it with approval and get buy-in. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do this when you're smaller because you have less baggage, if you will, but at the same time, it can be that you have less runway. Third, great example in how people start with an idea, build a product, and then the product teams focus more on the product than the initial and ongoing needs of the customer. And it's a great point on making a distinction between your packaging and your value. She said, and I quote, "Keep going back to your forever promise and say, if I were starting out today, this is the way I would deliver value, and what can I do to stay current with my offering?" Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. And hey, I'll promise you this. I'll make a forever promise to keep delivering great guests and great insight to how we do better and become better sharks. So please join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.